Hi, guys. How are you? This is your host, Yishai Breslauer, with the CRE SharkEye Show. Today, we have a treat. A treat we have. And this is Whitney Sewell, the master of the Syndication show. I had the privilege of being a guest in his show. And he is a veteran podcaster and a veteran commercial real estate guy. And we're going to hear so much about those two worlds, the world of real estate, commercial real estate, and the world of podcasting in, how do you say, on the highest level, as we call it. Whitney, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. It's my pleasure.
And we have so much to talk about. So, let's start with, first of all, let's start with what you do today, and then we'll start circling back. Give me like a 2-minute pitch of what is Whitney Sewell doing today? What is he busy with? Your companies, everything, like a 2-minute thing, and then we'll start digging in.
Yes. So today I operate LifeBridge Capital, our company where we purchase large apartment communities, right? We prefer 150 units or more at a time, but every once in a while we'll look at something that's around 100 units or so. But particularly in the West, so Colorado and Idaho are our, primary focuses, where we're buying some Class A properties. We're just doing a couple of new development projects now. But really our main focus has been the value add type models, mid to late 70s vintage properties that are need a facelift, right? And so we'll go in, put $7,000 to $10,000 in per unit roughly, and then really bring those properties up to market and be able to create a lot of value quickly for our investors. But so that's been our typical model, usually 506B type offerings, and we'll partner with hundreds and hundreds of investors from all over the world, mostly the U.S., but we have international investors as well, and we do that through multifamily syndication. And so, like you mentioned, we also have a daily podcast that's just focused on syndication, where I've got to interview over 1,000 guests in the last 2.5 to 3 years. And, we've built an amazing team that obviously does the show and, does marketing for us, but then also all of our real estate operations as well. We've built a great team around that also. So my wife and I also started a foundation called the LifeBridge Foundation that helps families afford the expense of adopting children. And so that's our big why, our big mission behind LifeBridge Capital, and just something we're very passionate about helping people with.
So that's incredible. And kudos to you. And you just gave me like a material for, I guess, 5 hours. So, because I'm curious, I'll tell you what, I'm curious about so many things that you spoke about. First of all, your business as a whole, your structure, the way you do it, and the locations that you operate, Colorado, Idaho, which are extremely interesting nowadays, okay? The migration to those areas. So I would love to hear more, and I'm sure that if listeners are listening to that and they're interested in those areas, they will jump in and ask you about how to join in. And I'd love to hear about your structures and everything. But let's hold on to that for a second, and let's go back to your story. How did you come to the real estate world, as to begin with?
Yeah, it's so amazing how we get where we are. It's usually not how we had planned, right? Or what we had planned doing, many years ago. I never imagined I'd be doing what I'm doing now. Too many years ago, but I was in the military. I joined the military in March of 2001. And I say March because it was in September that we were attacked. And then,
oh, wow.
And so I found
Where
out,
were you?
What's that?
Where were you?
I was actually still in high school, like senior year of high school when we were attacked. But I had just joined. I'd already joined the military though that March. And then I found out, all of 2005 I would be spending in Iraq. So I was in Iraq all of 2005.
Wow.
And then came home. And then, unfortunately, not everyone in my squad made it home. And so I'm very thankful to be here, right? I'm very grateful the Lord allowed me to survive and make it home safely. But I also received like Soldier of the Year while I was there. Very proud of that. But came home and became a police officer with Kentucky State Police. I had like 1,200 applicants for 5 positions. I was blessed to have one of those. Loved working the road with Kentucky State Police, but quickly found out that, about 2 years in, it started hitting me that, it's going to be hard to support a family on $35,000 a year. And so as much as I enjoyed, being a police officer, I got married soon after, and my wife and I just passed each other in the hallway the first whole year of marriage. And it was like, okay, this is just not what's best. I've got to find some other way, at least supplement my income, or maybe eventually do something else. And so I started looking for other ways to do that. Well, in came real estate. I wasn't raised around entrepreneurs or real estate investors, anybody like that that thought that way. But the more I learned about real estate investing, I realized that not only had one or two people built wealth in real estate, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people have built wealth in real estate, right? And so I thought, okay, if all of them can do it, I can do it too. This was 2009 now, purchased 2 triplexes and made a ton of mistakes. Just from one end to the other, made a ton of mistakes, learned a lot. Mistakes.
Right.
Yeah, I learned a lot the hard way. Thankfully, we didn't quit there. But I then became a federal agent. And so that moved us from Kentucky to Virginia, where I still live. I worked as a federal agent for a number of years while still growing a real estate brand. However, my focus was just on small multifamily, and we got up to like a 15 unit, and I really thought that we were doing something right. I didn't know that this world of syndication or commercial real estate was even out there or even an option for me. I would have said, "Oh no, maybe 20 years from now, I don't know who those guys are, right? I'm not ready for that." But then I started going to conferences, and I started meeting guys and gals who hadn't been in the business too long, but they were buying 100-unit complexes. And that just opened my eyes to the possibility that, wait a minute, if all these people can do it, guess what? I can do it too. And so just started educating ourselves. My wife and I had a farm and had another business. And when we learned about this, we determined that it was going to be very hard for me to ever be passive, for me to really have that passive stream of income and replace my income doing the small multis and the other business. So we sold everything. We sold the farm. I mean, we sold all the rentals that we had and completely committed meeting people in this space as fast as I could go. And we scaled very fast. It wasn't long till we started the podcast, the daily show. And then we've just moved very fast since then. We did 100 million last year, in multifamily and hope to do that much again this year or more. But yeah, it's been a great thing since then. I mean, the business has grown, the team has grown, and it's going well.
So it's amazing. And you're setting an example for a lot of people to do the same. And my question to you is, okay, you got into real estate, you got excited about this whole thing, and you said, okay, I'm going for those 100 units, et cetera. And then comes, right, and the learning curve, right? Comes the learning curve of, okay, I got to know what I'm doing. It's a lot more. What was the point? And before we get to the talk about the whole syndication idea, of raising capital from, other people's money, the whole OPM thing, before we get to that, I want to understand, meaning, where did you want to position yourself? Meaning, where did you want to position yourself? I'll explain what I'm asking. Okay, a deal is coming up. Are you the general partner, you the operator, the sponsor, what we call, or you decided, okay, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to be joining an operator and I'm going to go and syndicate the money? Before we get to the how you syndicated the money, which position you decided to take, and further on, where are you today?
Yeah, so initially it was focused on the investor relations, having the ability to raise money, finding a great operator to partner with. That's a great way to get in the business, finding somebody, that's really good at what they do and partnering and adding value through that method. There are some legal implications around that yes, that you really have to be careful with at the moment, or always. But it was quickly that we started doing our own deals. So I quickly built my own team and then started doing our own deals. So now we do not do that anymore as far as partnering with other operators. We're only raising money from our investors for our deals, and not anyone else's.
So getting your deals, it's not a simple thing. So what was the point? It's not a simple thing for 2 reasons. The first reason is that first of all, you have so much in your head, and and that's the point where you understand. I know, because I went through this. You understand all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I can't do this on my own. I need a team. So when was the point you said, oh my gosh, I need a team? And how did you go out to get the team? And who were the first people on the team? How did you grow your team?
Yeah, great questions. So as far as, when I go back to getting into the syndication business, I had started the podcast, right? And the podcast had, so I started a daily show. And I knew from the very beginning doing a daily show that there was no way that I could do all of it myself. Right. I knew there's no way I could edit all the audio, video, show notes, do all that myself. Doing that, if even finding 30 guests a month is a lot of work.
It's crazy. Yeah.
And so that pushed me to build a team of actually virtual assistants from all over the world from the very beginning, right? And so they helped me produce the show for a long time, and that's we've changed that numerous times since then. But that pushed me to build that team for that. For the podcast from the very beginning. And that kept me so busy that at the time it was going to be very difficult, say, for me to go and keep up with broker relations and really find a deal and do enough underwriting and things like that, right? I was doing a daily show. And when we started, I was still working full time. We were pursuing our third adoption process. And then we'd also moved, physically moved twice in the process. It was just it was a lot, to say the least. And so I knew that I had to have a team to go after our own deals, large deals. I had to have a team. It was going to be very difficult for me to continue to underwrite deals and like I said, continue broker relations. So eventually I did partner on a couple of projects with the operator, just like you're talking about, so I could gain more experience. My investor base could see me doing larger deals, right? There's a mindset shift that has to happen with the people that if they don't know you've ever, they know you as the dentist or they know you as the whatever, it's like something totally different for them to see something about real estate, from you, right? And so especially even going from small multi to large multi, some of them are like, wait a minute, I didn't know you did this, and so there's kind of a shell shock there. But that was my pursuit at that time, was continuing my commercial real estate brand and really, obviously pushing the podcast and those things, building those relationships with investors. But I knew to do my own deals, I had to build my team. I went to a conference. Long story short, I was introduced to a guy. Actually, my wife and I have been praying for a business partner for a long time. I'd turned down, dozens of people that had asked. Obviously, when people think you can raise a lot of capital, a lot of people want to partner with you. And but I just didn't feel it was the right connection. I'd spent way too much time and money working on these investor relations just to go, blow it and waste them or, make a wrong move. So I was at a conference. I was introduced to a guy from a mutual acquaintance, and his name's Sam Rust. He's my business partner now. But we got to speak over dinner a few nights at this conference amongst other people, and I got to hear him talking about his faith and his family and things he had accomplished. And I could just tell he's a very intelligent guy, and so. After the last night of the conference, I pulled him aside and just said, I have been praying for a business partner for a long time, and ultimately you seem to fit the bill. I'm interested in discussing that opportunity if you're open to it. And he was excited about it, and ultimately we
where did he come from exactly? What's his DNA? I would call it.
So what's his DNA? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he came from business.
In terms of the real estate I'm talking about.
So, right. So he had syndicated a small deal at this point. He had syndicated a 64-unit project on his own. And so by himself, which not too many people can do. But he had a business background. He was raised in business. I mean, he graduated college at 17. And so just a very intelligent guy. And, like I said, had been in business for many years already, even as a young guy, and knew real estate needed to be part of his portfolio. So he pursued syndication. And, but then he had broker relations and had deal flow, but guess what? He didn't have any capital. And so when we met, it seemed like a great fit, but we still went to great lengths to ensure it was a good fit. And so I even went back to Denver where he lives and stayed 3 or 4 days with he and his family just to get to know them, right? To make sure this was a good fit. And then we also partnered on a project, just kind of a test run first, and it went very well. And then we decided to make it official, pretty quickly after that. And it's gone very well. But like you said, it's definitely a team sport, but he has some specific skills that it was going to take me a while to be able to have time to even devote to those things, where that's what he had been committed to, where I had other skill sets that he didn't. And so it's been a great partnership.
That's the best type of partnership. When one has one type of skills, the other one has different type of skills, and that's how it completes. You guys complete each other, and it sounds great. Tell me something. how did you decide to get into those areas that you operate in? Meaning you're in Idaho, you're in Colorado. Where are you based, and why did you decide to go on those areas specifically? And when? Meaning, I'm assuming you shifted from other places and you got to those places, but that's where you operate now. Tell us a little bit about that decision process. How did you get to that?
Yeah. So initially, I was partnering with another operator out of Texas. That we'd done a couple large projects there. However, when Sam and I met, he lived in Denver, right? He's originally from Boise. And so we had a lot of connections in Idaho and Colorado almost immediately, right? And also, so we were looking in those areas at some of the best markets we could be investing in. One in Colorado Springs, we got started there very quickly. He already had a property there, knew the management company very well there, and so we just focused there. It was already a great market. I mean, it's had steady growth for like 100 years. There's not anything new about Colorado Springs having very steady growth, even more so over the last year, and Boise even more so. And so,
yeah, Boise is a lot of tech companies are going there. It's like crazy.
It is. We purchased a project in Boise in August and started meeting or surpassing our third year projections. It's incredible what's happening there.
Amazing. And when you get there, I guess the first thing you make connections with the local brokers and stuff like that, and you started seeing deals, and that's exciting. The question is, okay, you said that you're going for value add type of deals, right? What type of deals today in this market, today with this environment, post-COVID, what are you guys looking at, and what are you what's your value add game in those properties, in those deals?
Yeah, great question. I would say it's almost different per those two markets. Like I said, we purchased a Class A project in August of last year, and really through better management. It was just built in 17 and 19 in two phases, but just through better management alone, we were able to add a ton of value. So the developer was continuing to self-manage for a while, and honestly was just not doing the best job possible. But there was still a lot of value there, and just in that market too, as fast as it's growing, like I've already expressed. It is just it's just done amazing. But typically, our plan has been value add.
I'm sorry, I'm stopping you, but can you share a little bit of what, for example, that property specifically? What was the game? How do you say? That's the sexy part for investors. They want to hear what was the game that you guys did without putting a shovel, without putting a nail on the wall, as we call it, change the game, the management game, third-party management company, meaning from the asset point, which point what did you guys see that could change and you did it in general, without getting into too much details, but what was the game plan?
Yeah, I would even go back a little further and say it's so much about your relationship with your management company too, especially if you're not in that market, like living there, or have a long personal history there. Somebody that's managing thousands of units there and just has an amazing pulse on what is going, what is not going, what rent should be, all those things, it's vital. And so ultimately, we have a great relationship there with management. We're communicating with them through processes like that when we're submitting an LOI or talking about specific properties. Often they already know the property. In Colorado Springs, our management company's been there for 30 years. There's been numerous times they've managed properties that we've purchased like years ago, and they were able to share so many things with us that we needed to know through due diligence that otherwise you would not know. And so that's been very vital. But numerous, just simple things like some expenses or some that are pretty easily reduced or nixed altogether, or even just through better management or hiring Class A talent, you have less staff, or really, and not pushing rents. This property's been 100% occupied since it's been built, and still has. Initially we were saying, well, it's obviously they're not pushing rents, high as they could, and we're still, we've had it this long and we're still 100% occupied. That's why we're still. Yeah, it is. It is amazing, but it's not. It still even goes back to that team component, right? Especially when we're in numerous markets and numerous things happening all the time. We are communicating with property management and those team members. It's just a vital communication there to be had when we're talking about what can be done to this property to create value.
It's amazing what you say, because you said And that's something that everybody who's listening, look at what Whitney just said. And this is mind-boggling. Came a developer who has his expertise is actually developing a property. He takes a property from a ground up, and he knows how to take it and make a beautiful, amazing, exceptional property. And at the same time, he doesn't know how to manage, meaning it's a different skill set that a guy or a company doesn't have. And they think, okay, I built it, maybe I can actually pull it through, and they pull it through. But then comes Whitney and his partner, and they say, okay, the devil, how do you say, the devil's in the numbers, in the details. And they look in the details and they find ways to make money. And you don't need to do a lot. You just have to pay attention. You know, in The Big Short, they say, in the beginning of the movie, if you remember, they say they did one thing, they looked, you know, and sometimes that's all you need to do. Let's shift for a second to your other areas that are more aggressive type of jobs, what you guys do with development and with stuff that is more, you know, you need to do a lot more stuff with. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, now development is kind of new to us. So we just started our first development project right now, actually, and it won't be completed for a year. So we're kind of new to the development space. So we're actually doing our first development right now, but we partnered again with another developer that we have a relationship with. And we actually have created other team members that are helping us, through the development process. Because again, and like you said about management, we do have to know a lot about management, but it's not the highest and best use of our time right now to create our own management company, our own management team, when we have great third-party management in place. But on the development side, it's again finding experts that we can partner with. I don't claim to be the development expert. However, we are going to have experts on our team, for all those aspects that we need.
That's the most important part
in this space. Right. That's right.
I always say that, whoever runs commercial real estate needs to be a conductor, not an expert. You need to know how to conduct the orchestra, and that's the expertise. I love it. Very good. Tell me something. Let's shift a little bit. You have that syndication show, which we're going to talk about in a second. But syndication is raising capital. It's a skill. And not everybody knows how to do it. Can you talk a little bit about that, how you got to do it, how you became good at that? Because you didn't come from a place, some folks, they come from rich families. So in my community, you go to the synagogue, and if your synagogue is incorporated with people who are very high-end business people, then you go to the services, and after services, you say, hey, I have a deal, and blah, 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 and that's how, things are going, and this guy, you get a $500,000, this guy gives you 250,000, this is going to give 50, you're done, right? In more professional settings, you have campaigns or you have different things. But you came from Iraq. You're in the Army. You're a police officer. You're a federal agent. You're earning, like you said, $35,000. You don't have those connections. How did you do that?
It was not easy, to say the least. It was not easy, and it's really. It just really goes back to the discipline and consistency. Starting the podcast, and who do you associate yourself with, right? And really meeting. You think about everybody talks about how valuable your network is. I think about how fast my network has grown by doing a daily podcast, right? And not just the podcast alone, but I started traveling to network or to networking conferences, and as hard as I could go, right? I mean, so I was going to 2 to 3 weekends a month, flying somewhere all over the country to different conferences and just networking as hard as I could go. And that was very early on. But then it's all about your follow-up process, right? It's all about reconnecting with people and staying in front of people. And we started creating systems for that, of course. But I'll say something else too, was sharing our mission and our why. I didn't plan it this way, but sharing those things with people at a conference started to make a very big difference. I started to notice. And because what happens is if you're at a conference and there's 200 or 300 people there, and or even if there's 25 people there and it's one night, and you're trying to talk to as many people as possible, how many of those people do you think are going to remember you, right? Especially if you're all talking about real estate. You're all talking about multifamily, or you're all talking about real estate. They're probably not going to remember you. So, I started talking about our why and our mission behind LifeBridge Capital, and that really helps people to see me on a much more personal level outside of business, right?
Right.
And there's something else to connect there about. So when we connect again a week later, 3 weeks later, they remember that. That started, going a long ways. Like I said, I didn't plan it that way, but I started seeing things happen in that manner. And then it was just the massive consistency of phone calls after phone calls after phone calls after interview after interview after interview, growing our investor base over, over a few years, over a long period of time, to the point where, we would put out a project a week and a half ago and it oversubscribed in 3 hours.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that's what's called consistency. Which leads me to the question of questions. How in the world you do every day? You have this show coming out every single day, and I get your emails. I was on your show and I get your emails, the daily thing, and you get your weekly wrap, with all those interviews. And, I do it twice a week, and it's a lot. I don't have a team. I'm doing it on my own on a much lower scale. It's not, I'm not there, at that point. But I'm assuming you didn't start also where you are today. It was totally different, probably in day one and even day 10.
Sure.
Where you are today, obviously. But the question is, you decided to do every day from day one or later on, and how did you do that?
Yes, it was from day one. We decided to do a
Wow.
daily podcast. And so I think my first day I recorded
Who
3
told you to do
interviews.
that?
I only known at the time, I only knew of one other daily real estate podcast, and so, it was like, it's worked for him. And so, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here. It's like, let's just go all out. Let's just jump in and make it happen. And I was at a conference. Two of the conferences that I went to, I met with 2 individuals that are very big names in our space. Most people listening would probably know of them. And both of them said, Whitney, you're crazy. Don't do that. That's insane. Don't do that. And
I agree with them.
And so it made me start to question myself, right? And I really have, had that like never give up mentality, just the military, law enforcement, background. I thought, no, I can do this. But at that time, considering who these people were and the respect I had for them, I thought, well, wait a minute, maybe I should reconsider. And then I said something to my mentor about it at the time, and he was like, that's why you have to do it, because nobody else is going to do it. I was like, okay, we're going to do it, But building that team was crucial. Again, I mean, I had to have the team, had to build out processes for them. Like I said, I think the first day I recorded 3 interviews. The next day, I think I did 5. The next day I did 8. And so then after that, it was like, and then I could do it, right? I'd done enough shows, a lot of shows all together, but also when I was still working full time at the time, and I would work every other Monday. And those Mondays, my team knew that they better schedule at least 12 to 15 shows back to back, nonstop. And that's what I did for a couple of years. Like I would just do 12 to 15 shows, in one day if I could, and I would have numerous afternoons a week where I would do 3 or 4 shows.
That's incredible. Incredible is like underrated. But the question, you know what? I'll ask you a difficult one, when it comes to podcasting and all that stuff. I started doing this, and I'm still in the beginning, but I started doing this while, after I was already deep in the commercial real estate game, after I had 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, and after I knew pretty much the whole world and their sister. So, and I'm still having a hard time to find the best of the best, people as guests, meaning I can tell you that from day one, first of all, I start talking because I have a lot to say, and I started that. And then I said, okay, I want to start having guests. And I brought really high quality people. Each one I brought, each and every person I brought was a high quality person. And people say, and you hear the reactions right away. They say, okay, you're new. Not a lot of people listen to you, but oh my gosh, this show is amazing. You got so many great people. And it's hard. And it's twice a week, but it's hard. You were in the very beginning. And this brought you the investors eventually. But how did you get the guests? Oh my gosh, how do you get guests when you don't know anyone, when you're a police officer, who do you talk to? And there's no LinkedIn, and Facebook is like, has diapers, and Instagram didn't even exist, and all those things. How did you do that then? You knocked on doors? How did that work?
Yeah, finding guests. I mean, it has been almost a full-time position for someone since we started. Not for me. I mean, I didn't have time to find the guests, but I did have to lay out some specific criteria. And even now, doing as many as we are, it's still difficult to ensure every guest is as qualified as I would prefer to be on the show. But however, what I do know as well is that there is something we can all learn from almost anyone, right?
I agree.
And what I've learned, and I learned this the hard way, actually by being a guest on someone else's show, and I've learned that before I do an interview now, I always ask the guests, like, what is your unique ability? Like, what, give me some things that helps me to focus the conversation on like what you are good at, right? Like, what is it that you are, your thing? Because that's what someone is going to be,
what's your superpower?
The best at. That's right. That's what they're going to be able to talk about the best. It's where they're going to provide the most value. It's where they're going to be the most comfortable. And that's where the listener is going to learn the most also. So that's helped me a lot to be able to just ask a question like that and talk about that a little bit before the show. But obviously I want to ensure that it's connected to the real estate syndication business, and adding value to those people that are in our space. But so I've had somebody else in another country for a long time, but right now in the Philippines, I've got a team there, four full-time people in the Philippines that do marketing and most podcasts and things. And one lady manages the entire podcast for me now. And the big thing she does is find guests. And the big way she does, initially was from other shows and whatnot, but after we've gotten to 1,000 guests or so, that starts dwindling down. And now, we use LinkedIn or we use Facebook some, or we do other searching and whatnot to find a really top-notch operators and syndicators in our business, who sometimes we find stay under the radar, right? They don't have podcasts. They don't have,
exactly.
They don't put themselves out there really, but however, they're pretty amazing operators.
These are the best, by the way.
Of times. Yeah. A lot of them have been in the business a very long time.
There's almost, I'll just share with you a story. I just actually interviewed a guy, who I saw his post on LinkedIn about what they do. They do technology, audio and video installation for commercial real estate in big scale. Very interesting thing. And I said, listen, that would be cool in my show. And he said, I've never been. I'm so scared. I don't want to. And I convinced him. And then he said, okay. And it was a great show. And the guy was just interesting. It was just so interesting. So I agree with what you said. You have to bring in people, and it doesn't have to be a superstar in terms of their popularity, in terms of podcasting or being a guru, out there, but they just have a great business or they have a great thing going, and you want to hear what they do, and you can learn so much from them. So I agree with you 100%. So tell me something, what's up next for you? Meaning, we always want to grow, right? That's the thing. And you are definitely an example and a role model in growing for everybody. So what's next? Meaning, what do you look up to? Who do you look up to? What do you look up to? Where are you going? What's next?
No, I appreciate that. And there's always, we're just always growing, right? We're just always pushing to learn personally and as a team, and no doubt about it. And I just, this past year experienced such growth, over the next, I would say 6 to 8 months, we'd love to hire probably 2 to 3 more people internally, and really stay ahead of the growth, as far as really having a full-time asset manager, maybe a full-time acquisitions guy, and on our team that can really focus again, right? We talked about Sam and I for having certain lanes, but even then we want to even split those out, specialize even more if at all possible. I know we're going to have a fund in the very near future as well, so instead of doing single asset deals, we're going to, we'll have a fund as well. Just because, we just had a great response from investors and just like 50% of our new investors come from referrals now. We know that. And so that's just, it's just incredible, to see our growth and what's happening, what's in the near future.
Where are your company based, if I may ask?
I personally live in Virginia.
Okay, and your partner? He's in Colorado.
Yeah, he's in Denver. That's right.
Well, it just shows us, that things can be done from a distance. Meaning, I know for myself, I'm doing it from Israel, and at the time going back and forth. But today, you can do a lot of things from a distance. tell me something. When you structure a deal, let's go back to that before we close. When you structure a deal, how do you what do you tell your investors? You guys, obviously every deal is different, every single thing is different, but for all those syndicators out there, because you are, I see you as I see you as the syndicator master, we call it, okay, the
I appreciate
syndication
that.
show guy, right? Comes in a new syndicator, comes in a new guy, meaning I know how I do it, but comes in a new guy and he asks me, how do I do that? Meaning I have a guy and he gave me $100,000 and I need to raise $1 million and I want to give it to the operator and I'm a syndicator. How do I do that? So I'm at ask Whitney.
So your question, just so I clarify, is somebody that has $100,000, they can raise $100,000 and they're bringing it to an operator. How do they do it legally?
He raised $1 million, and he got a guy who gives them 100,000. What is he telling his investor? He's a new guy to syndicate.
I see.
Without getting into the ins, you know, of all the details, but in general, what should he tell the investor?
Yeah. First and foremost, you need to be honest, right? You need to be completely honest.
100%.
It's going to come out. If you're not, like, don't blow smoke, because it's going to come out, you know, and then it's going to be horrible, right? And so be completely honest. But as far as telling that investor, I would back up and say you need the relationship with the operator. And you need to develop that relationship, and that operator needs to agree that you can partner on a project and you can add value outside of capital raising, right? You know, there's something that you can do for that team, because then when you go to investors, it's helpful in the beginning if you can focus on that operator's track record, right? You can say, you know, I'm working with such and such, and, you know, they've done this kind of deals or this track record, this many years, these markets, whatever, as opposed to focusing on the lack of deals that you've done, you know, or, you know, the deals that you're looking to do, right? It's a very different conversation then with that new investor, when you can point to this track record and this team that you're partnering with, or your team, you know, at that point, as opposed to just focusing on the lack thereof. If you're just saying, well, this is what I plan to do. So that's how a lot of people I know, you know, get started in the business. I would just say, obviously I'm not an attorney, but I would say, make sure you're adding value outside of capital raising, and you're not being paid just based on what you raise and things like that, because it is illegal. And
it's illegal,
and
you have to have a role in the company, in the management role,
right?
And be a part of it, be a part of the deal, have an active role. And I always, you know what, also, you know, the first people ask me, you know, you got to get into a deal. How do I start? I want to raise capital. I have capital. I want to get into a deal, and they have some significant money and they want to be a part of something. I say, don't be a passive investor. Be a passive, active investor. What does that mean? Obviously, there's the big honcho who runs the show. You're not going to run the show. Okay, that's a given. But you there's a difference between not running the show and sitting at home. They take my money, do whatever, and show me the numbers, tell me what it is, and let's meet in, I don't know, year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever, and let me know how much I made, you know, or an annual, you know, little call. Oh, investors, you did this or that. I always tell people, you want to be you want to get into real estate. You just don't want to just throw money and, yeah, it'll make, you know, you'll see the income. Some people, it's great. You know, some people are doctors. They don't have time for this. It's great for them to give someone the money and to be able to get it. But someone who wants to get into commercial real estate, I always say, you need to know who you're dealing with, and you need to know the stuff, and be a passive, active guy. Ask the right questions, learn, study, educate yourself, so the next time around you'll be more involved. And I love that tip. That's great, right? You can't just sit on the sidelines forever. Very good. Whitney, what can I tell you? So many things we can learn from you, and so much experience you have, and that's incredible. And your show is just great. You know, listening to your show constantly teaches other people. Anything you have to say about your show? What is your vision in your show? What do you love about your show? Meaning, I know where you started it, but where it is today, you so-called don't really need it anymore, right? But you do it because you love it. What is so unique about it that you love so much, and your guests, and what you want to deliver?
You know, the thing that's unique about podcasting is, and I think what a lot of people don't realize is that networking component. And I think like the 10 minutes after the show with the guests is like sometimes the best part, right? You've stopped recording, and I think, especially if they haven't been interviewed much, there's a little more stress during the show, right? But after you stop recording, it's like, then you can really have a conversation, just like you all meeting at a conference or something, and really get to know each other a little better. Oftentimes, that's been a great time to connect. I do think also the further along you get, the more you get to know about your listeners as well. The more investor calls that I have, and people are saying, you know what, I've been listening for this long, and I listen to you every morning on the way to work or every morning at the gym, and I feel like I already know you. Right. I mean, there's so much value in that, especially when you're going to raise capital. Right. I'll have a 20-minute call with an investor, and often at the end, they'll say, well, I didn't even give you a chance to talk. Obviously I'm asking them questions, right? I want to know a lot more about them. And they'll say, well, I didn't even give you a chance to talk, but I feel like I already know you anyway. And so that is just an amazing thing that comes from podcasting, that credibility, them being just hearing my voice every day. There's so much value in that with your investors. We hope to continue improving the show. We're doing some new things now to help improve the show and do some different things that we hope the listeners, love and adds value to them, especially people that are getting into this business and learning how to syndicate, but also, passive investors as well.
The last question I have is, first of all, it's the one before last. The one before last is, do you do also other social medias, or you just do the podcasting and done? Meaning, I guess YouTube, you are on YouTube, obviously, because it's a video, it's a video format. You obviously download it in the audio and however you do that. But are you also active on all the other social media platforms, or not that much, or your team just posts? And what's your method?
Yeah. And we've worked on that a lot. Actually, I personally am not that active on social media. I've done, numerous Facebook Lives here and there, and I'll share about different things, I've learned or whatever. But personally, I don't like being on social media myself. I don't like being connected to Facebook. I don't like, being sucked into Facebook personally and wasting so much time in a news feed.
I understand.
But yes, we are very active on Facebook. So like every show gets posted on Facebook, on our Facebook group, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. And a couple times a day, actually, there's posts about that guest or about that show, or quotes from them, or snippets, from the video and things like that. So we do post a lot on all those platforms.
Amazing. You know what? You started the show by saying that you guys do all kind of stuff for the community. And I remember one thing about your show is that in the end of your show, you asked me, how do you give back? And I want to throw it back at you. And I know that you do so much for the community. I want to hear a little bit about that before we say goodbye, as we call it, to the audience.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So when my wife and I moved to Roanoke, we heard a pastor talk about how they had adopted and how it can cost $40,000 to $60,000 to bring a child home through adoption, and how there's like 150 million orphans in the world. And so we had never discussed adopting before, but on our way home, it was as simple to us as, why would we not adopt? And so at that time, within a week, we turned in our application to adopt from Ethiopia. And then 2 years to the month, our first son came home. Samuel came home from Ethiopia. Within about 8 or 9 months later, we had adopted again. Our second son, Elijah, came home through adoption. And then now we also have a daughter now, Eden Joy, that's almost 2. She also came to our family through adoption. And so the first couple of processes, though, were so difficult financially. It costs so much money, right? And we would talk to so many people that want to adopt and would be great parents. However, they say, Whitney, well, that's more than I make in a year. How can we even start that process? And so that's when the Lord just really pushed my wife and I, and really opened our minds to starting our own foundation and really helping families with the financial burden of adoption. And so that's been kind of a lifelong thing, and a lifelong, but since for LifeBridge Capital, that's been the why behind it. And we're now to where we are actually helping families. And so it's been a neat transition, actually getting to the point now where we're actually partnering with families to help them financially bring their children home through adoption. And that's our big why, my wife and I, through LifeBridge Capital. And that's just helps us going.
First of all, it's beautiful. And the second thing is that's setting up an example for everybody else, for all of us to hear not only how you can be successful in real estate and podcasting and in the world of business, but how you can create yourself the wealth, not only in money, but the wealth in your life via helping and, getting out to the community and say, what can I give back in such an amazing way? And that's such a profound way. What a soldier from Iraq who went into the police force, and with very little income made. And kudos to you. What can I tell you? It's a beautiful story. I love that. And thank you so much for being on our show. Stick around before I'll just say my goodbyes to everybody else. And first of all, obviously, you guys are listening to the show. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have, and inspired as much as I have been. Check out all the links, whatever medium you're looking at. If it's a podcast, check out the links. Check out all the data that you need to know about the syndication show and about Whitney, who is out there all over the place. One of the best shows in commercial real estate, really highly recommended. And another thing, look up at his company and his activity, whatever they do. If you're interested in investing and looking into your own wealth and creating your own wealth in the future, it's another way to do that. Check out the links above and the top, wherever you want to see. And of course, keep on listening to the CRE SharkEye show. Look at all the links that I have below and make sure that you engage yourself. And I'll see you in the next show. You guys take care.